What was the nicest thing someone has done for you? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. When my parents were awful and my sister was passing away, my friend's parents took me in for a while, but they did it in a way that seemed like a sleepover for a few months. I didn't realize until I was an adult how much they stepped up for me. Story 2. I went to a local breakfast spot after a rough night. Totally forgot my wallet, so I left my phone as collateral and went to my house. Came back and some guy had already paid for me. I know it doesn't seem that big of a deal, but it was a pretty bleak week for me, so it meant a lot. Story 3. My mother died and I was so stressed trying to find a way to give her the funeral she deserved. My boyfriend went down to the funeral home, made the arrangements, and paid the balance. By far the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me. Story 4. One of my high school bullies invited me to his house to hang out for a day. I was really nervous it might just be to screw with me, but I was desperate for some sort of friendship, so I went over. We're now best friends and he and his family feels like family to me, and I have no idea how we ever disliked each other. Story 5. Someone ran out of their home and gave me water to drink after I fell from the bike. It's not really that bad other than a few scratches to the side, but it's nice to see people helping out. Story 6. A paramedic helping me after I was in a car crash took his time to come back to the car and bring me back my front tooth. That was really tiny, and he offered to go and look for it in a wreck. And at the same time found and brought back my partner's phone. I don't know his name. I was in such a state of shock I can't even remember how he looked like. But he put my tooth in a special liquid, and the hospital team managed to put it back, saving me a lot of money. There was also a policewoman who put a blanket on me and made sure I kept it. The hospital only managed to take it off me right before I left. It was a green standard first aid blanket. I don't know why I refused to let go of it. Again, shock. But it provided a lot of comfort. Thank you so much, guys. Story 7. Sorry for shifting the frame of the question to nicest thing someone I know has done for someone else. My brother took a fellow band nerd on a high school graduation road trip for several weeks. Thing is, the friend was dying of leukemia, and they both knew that this was going to be his first and last road trip. No timetable, just one day at a time across the breadth of the US. Story 8. I was involved in a hit and run on my bicycle in Chicago. I broke my collarbone, first broken bone, and a strange R drove me to the ER. I was going into shock and freaking out about finances. I'm a single mother and 2020 is the worst year. The stranger gave me her number for the police report and such, and later sent me $5,000 because she knows what it's like to be a single mother with nothing. I sobbed. I hadn't gotten my unemployment yet and still haven't gotten a stimulus check. I was overwhelmed by her kindness and I will never forget it. Story 9. Was having a panic attack. Swung between so euphoric I thought I was going to ascend and terrified that I was going to die for certain. Called my loved ones to say goodbye, including my best friend. He came running from a block away. He was terrified too, but he held it together, sat me down, hugged me, told me that he didn't want me to go anywhere, that he needed me right here. I needed that. I needed to see what I felt wasn't based on reality. Needed someone to say that I should not obey those feelings because I was needed and loved. On some level, he saved me. Years later, he voluntarily went into homelessness just to fly out to see me on another continent. Yes, we're together now. No, I don't know how I got so lucky. We're planning the wedding. Story 10. When I was a freshman in high school, I took an art class that was a mix of 9th-12th graders. I was so bad with people back then, so I spent most of class sitting on the floor between the trash can and the drying racks and never speaking to anyone. There was this one 11th grade guy who always would talk to me. He didn't know me or anything. He just happened to sit near me. But he'd always ask about my day or compliment my art or offer to help me with my math homework. At one point, he even managed to get me to sit at the desk with the rest of the students. It's just one of those things I think about from time to time because he really had every right to ignore me like everyone else did. But he didn't. He really made art class into a second home for me. I miss that guy. Story 11. During my physics MSc, there was a terrible prof for 2 of my core classes. terrible at teaching, but also known for complaining at faculty meetings how the grades had been going down in his classes ever since more women started taking them. I put in a ton of work anyway, and despite all that, he gave me 2 Ds for those 2 classes. I've legit never heard of someone getting Ds in grad school and finishing, and was convinced my road was done. At that point, I told a prof who had been supportive what happened, and he got me a stiff drink to talk over, in which he said that technically there was no requirement for classes to take. It was just assumed you'd take the stuff that helps you pass the qualifier. But this guy's classes clearly weren't doing that, so instead he told me to sign up for 2 independent study classes, which he would supervise. And all I would be doing is practice questions for the qualifying exam. This varies, but basically in my depth it was a 2-day written exam to get the MSc and go on to do a PhD on everything in physics. So we did exactly that. I studied. And we would meet up a few times a week to go over problems. By the end of the semester, I took my quals and passed with margins to spare. Today, I'm a postdoctoral fellow in astronomy at Harvard, which never would have happened if that prof hadn't taken a chance on me and put in so many hours to help me. It makes me so determined to help all the students in my path and mentor them well, because people can be capable of so much more than one bad prof thinks they are. Story 12. I am from 1980s rural Texas, where education was laughed at and where the idea of living in a foreign, said with a sneer, country was ludicrous. When I was 17, I met a Rotarian who allowed me to go on a year-long foreign exchange. I'd never heard of that before and had no real idea of what it meant. At 18, I packed my bags and discovered a brand new world. It honestly changed my life forever. Definitely for the better. While I was gone, I met other foreign exchange students and learned that it was fairly difficult to get into this program. I'd heard ambassadors' children were being turned down. I honestly think that I got to go because no one else from my area wanted to leave the safety of our small town, while I jumped at the chance. I think about that old Rotarian a lot. I owe him everything for changing my life. Story 13. I've posted this before. This is the nicest thing someone has done for me. This was in Seoul. It was late at night, and I decided to surprise a girl I was talking to by heading to her apartment. My now ex-girlfriend. It was around 10:30, and unbeknownst to me, the subway stopped running at 11. Unfortunately, I was halfway there, and I decided to message her, and she told me to take a specific bus to get to her city. I get on the bus, and I don't have the slightest idea on what stop I should be getting off on. Well, about 10 minutes later, a load of people get off on this one stop. An older Korean businessman sees me and motions to me that there's an available seat next to him. He starts talking to me in English, and he says that the stop where I'm getting off is one stop before he gets off, and that he'll let me know when. We start conversation about where he works, how he learned English, what I'm doing in Korea. By the time we knew it, his stop came up. He profusely apologized to me and said that it was the stop before. I said, "It's okay, I'll just walk the opposite direction." As we get off the bus, we're both walking in the same direction. As we come up to an intersection, he flags down a taxi, tells him the subway station to drop me off on, and he paid the fare. All this while still apologizing to me. Story 14. I had really shitty periods when I was a teenager. They still kind of suck a lot. But they were at their absolute worst when I was March 15th, 2024 to 17. One day, I was at school, and my period started a few days early. I knew I didn't have long before I was going to be in a world of pain, but I had one last class before the school day was over, and I could go home. And I lived about half an hour away from my school, so I decided it was pointless to call home and have someone pick me up, because I would have had to stick around for most of my class anyway while I waited for my ride. My school had block scheduling, so it was still going to be a 90-minute class. But whatever. So I just put on a pad and hoped for the best. Not long after I went to my class, I could already feel the pain getting intense. I tried not to squirm or do anything else distracting while my teacher was giving her lecture, but eventually she noticed that I looked extremely distressed and asked what was wrong. Since I went to an all-girls school, I felt comfortable saying that my period had just started and so I wasn't feeling well. Suddenly, the whole room sprang into action. One girl asked if I needed a pad or a tampon. Another girl got permission from the teacher to grab middle from her locker. At one point, I dashed out of the classroom to the nearest bathroom to puke, and a friend who was in my class followed me to the bathroom to hold my hair out of my face. After all of that, I went to the office and called home to have someone come and get me because I knew I really couldn't wait it out until the school day was over. The secretary let me stay in the lounge area outside the office, which was nice because the chairs were pretty comfy and I was already really sore at that point. One of the girls from my class asked if it would be okay for her to stay with me as I waited for my ride home, because she knew I lived relatively far away, so I was going to be there a while. She and I weren't super close. I wouldn't have said we were friends because we didn't hang out in the same friend groups, and we didn't have a lot of classes together the entire time we were in high school. But she was really sweet for wanting to stay with me, and so we spent the next 30-40 minutes just sitting and talking, which was easily the longest time I had ever talked with her. That day will always stick out to me. It was really touching how everyone in my class showed so much concern for me and wanted to help, even if they didn't really know me all that well. We all need to look out for one another, you know? Story 15. My firstborn had a severe deformity and spent a week in hospital before we took him off life support. I was staying at the Ronald McDonald House, and even though one of the rules was that you are your own maid when you leave, complete with doing laundry and remaking the beds, I was a complete wreck. A kind stranger took care of my room for me, even though they were going through their own stuff. Another blessing from that dark time is that the funeral home took care of everything for me, including all bills associated with the service and cremation. I will never not donate to the Ronald McDonald House, and I know what funeral home I'll be using when I one day need one again. Edit. Thank you everyone for the well wishes and the love, and really thank you to people who have said they will be donating to this charity. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to have even the little time with him that I did. It was a very long time ago and very dark, sad time. It destroyed my family. A few years later, I lost my husband to suicide stemming from the depression that happened from this. And while both deaths changed me, I'm very good now and know happiness. I want to say that I've thought about how very, very bad things can get in the world, but this stranger. And people like you show me daily that the world is full of amazing, loving people, and even when I do get feeling really down, thinking about good people helps. You've all got me crying in a really good way. All right, folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.